What happens when everything we know about something changes?
I tell people all the time, this is the best American story you never heard.
We're out hitting the pavement, talking to restaurants, talking to bars.
I don't think of myself as a whiskey salesperson. I want you to know his name.
Drink by drink, we're bringing this story to light.
When we have to step back through the pages of history.
It's so much more than whiskey. It's so much more than a brand. It's a movement.
When we have to make amends and pay respect.
We're honoring the greatest whiskey maker the world never knew. And it's beautiful.
And give credit where credit is due.
Uncle Nearest is the godfather of Tennessee whiskey, and the world needs to know it.
What happens? We do it. Uncle Nearest, it's more than whiskey.
Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of Gentlemen's Club Whiskey, presented by the Gentlemen's Club channel. I'm your host, Mark Antimate, and in today's very special episode, I'm going to present to you the story of the best whiskey maker the world never knew, just in time to finish out Black History Month. Gentlemen, I have been waiting the absolute longest to get my hands on this whiskey and to try this. And finally I did. Living inside of central Tokyo, Japan, getting quote unquote boutique whiskey such as this is very hard to come by in a place like this. And being a very new whiskey in a new distillery, this had first started out being distributed all around Tennessee. And then it had started being distributed around some other states. And then I had to play the waiting game. And finally, at the tail end of 2018, it had made its way to central Tokyo. Now, even though I'm from the United States and I live in central Tokyo, I have lived a part of my life in Tennessee. But unfortunately, I was not living in Tennessee in the years that this had become available. And I have not even visited Tennessee for the absolute longest time. So when it finally made its way to Tokyo, I made sure that I went in by train and I went to the liquor store that carries this and I bought a bottle. It didn't run me too much. I think it's about 70-ish something bucks in the United States. And it's about 80 bucks inside of Japan, which is only 10 bucks more, but you know, with the shipping and I guess the importation tax, you know, I wasn't taking too much of a hit. I paid pretty much close to the same price that you would pay in the United States. But anyways, let me tell you guys the story of the best whiskey maker the world never knew. So there was this man, an African-American man. He was a slave in the 1800s, and he went by the name of Nathan Green, but everybody called him Nearest. That was his nickname, Nearest Green. Nearest Green was a slave born in Maryland, and at later parts of his life, he was living and working in Lynchburg, Tennessee. And there was one family there that was using his resources to have Nearest help him out on the farm and do things as well as getting his help with distilling whiskey. Now on that farm that Nearest Green worked on, there was a young boy who was very interested in what Nearest Green was doing. And that young boy was interested, more importantly, in with how Nearest Green distilled whiskey. And taking it upon himself, he would visit Nearest Green oftentimes to learn his methods and to become a protege. And he took Nearest as his mentor to teach him how to distill whiskey. And that young man had grew up to become the most well-known whiskey maker in the world over. I mean, even if it's not the most sold whiskey in the world, it is in the United States, but to say it is in the world, who knows? That title might go to Johnny Walker, but at the same time, if memory serves me correct, it could be Jack Daniels. So that little boy was Jack Daniels himself, and he had learned the distillation process from Nearest Green. Now, it took this story about 100 years, a little bit more than 100 years to come to light, because nobody never knew this story before. It was just lost to the ravages of time. And then in the late 2010s, this article come out on the New York Times telling the story about Nathan Green. And there was this lady, Fawn Weaver, absolutely wanted to find out whether the story was true or not. So she went through the process of doing her own research on it after reading that very same New York Times article that I did. So she went to Lynchburg, Tennessee to meet some family members of Nathan Nearest Green. And she found out all she could about him. And, you know, she did the ancestry DNA thing, and she went through genealogy and all kinds of things just to find the living relatives of him and to find out as much as she could from them, as well as find out where the distillery was located that he worked on. And surprisingly, it was still there. And she did her research on site to find out even more about the man. And it turns out that he was real. And finally, it came to light, it came to fruition that Jack Daniels had acknowledged that the story was true. And so there you have it, the greatest story that the world had never knew. So I present to you Uncle Nearest, 1856. There is a little book that comes attached to every bottle, and I'm going to open this up and read it now. And let's hope that it confirms everything that I just said, because I hope I told the story off the top of head correctly and didn't make any big mistakes there. But it says, the hills and hollows around Lynchburg, Tennessee don't easily give up their secrets. The whispers have always been here, undiminished by the passage of time and the buzz of the larks and the mockingbirds. Here, where Tennessee whiskey was born, the story quietly endured for nearly 2 centuries, kept alive through the recollections of kinfolk and neighbors and faded ink on brittle yellow pages. Was it possible that the real godfather of Tennessee whiskey was a man the world never knew? Was it true that a former slave became a master distiller, helped perfect the process, still followed today, and taught his craft to others who would find worldwide fame and become whiskey legends in their own right? Let us tell you the story of the man they called Uncle Nearest. Back then, the good folks of Lincoln County were a highly knowledgeable bunch when it came to farming, milling, and the raising of fat swine. They also knew their whiskey. Nothing pleased them more than the sight of steam and smoke snaking skyward from the still house on Louse Creek. It signaled to those in the hollow that Nearest was hard at work, making whiskey that surpassed all others. Uncle Nearest's whiskey was soon known as far away as Huntsville and Nashville for its uncommon smoothness and character. Many believe he may have been responsible for helping perfect what became known as the Lincoln County process, where whiskey is filtered through layers of sugar maple charcoal, a process that defines Tennessee whiskey and makes it unlike any other distilled spirit in the world. The scattered remnants of cut stone still remain, but the old distillery on Louse Creek has been gone for generations now. The tin and timber beams, no match for the rigors of nature and time. Yet the legacy of Uncle Nearest is alive and strong and ready to be shared by those who enjoy an exceptional whiskey and those who believe in giving due credit to a man who worked in the shadows, turning crystal clear water into gold. And then inside of this book, there's some recipes that you can make with Nearest Green whiskey. But there you have it, the story of Uncle Nearest. Presented to you right here on Gentleman's Club Whiskey, closing out Black History Month of 2019, telling you guys of absolute great story that the world needs to hear. I'm absolutely so proud that Fawn Weaver, co-founder of the Nathan Nearest Green Foundation and the founder of the Uncle Nearest 1856 whiskey, has pieced together a team and has put together and put out this whiskey because, you know, Jack Daniels lets it be known every now and then that if you ask him the question, was Uncle Nearest responsible for teaching Jack Daniels the methods, they'll acknowledge it when asked, but they don't go out of their way to present this story as much as they should. And so now with his very own whiskey, with his name on the bottle, the story can be told the proper way, and he can get the acknowledgement and the respect that was due to him. And my God, it pleases me that I can tell this story. What I'm hoping for with this whiskey, I'm hoping that this whiskey can absolutely knock me off my socks. And I'm truly looking for something that can surpass Jack Daniels and take its proper place inside the whiskey market the world over. It's already making its rounds. Like I said, it's found its way to Tokyo, Japan. I mean, you look at this bottle, you just know that you're absolutely in store for something special. Just the 750 milliliter size of it, the nice bottling, the way that it's presented, the presentation of this is absolutely amazing. It speaks volumes. There's the house there. Here's the Tennessee state flag. Everything is well presented in nice gold font that's embossed on the bottle. It says, "Smoothest whiskey in Tennessee, Uncle Nearest 1856 premium whiskey, distilled in small batches, handmade in Tennessee, maple charcoal filtered, aged in charred oak barrels." And it's 50% volume or 100 proof for my American friends. On the back it says, "Astonishingly smooth with a gentle finish, Uncle Nearest 1856 is inspired by the best whiskey maker the world never knew. Tennessee's premier master distiller and teacher, Uncle Nearest helped perfect the distinctive maple charcoal filtering process that exemplifies the best of American whiskey. Made by hand, double distilled and aged in American oak barrels, Uncle Nearest 1856 pays tribute to his legacy and craft." So we're getting ready to crack this bad boy open. Wow, breaking this seal is, you just know that you're opening something special here. Nice cork cap. Absolutely wonderful aroma. Gentlemen, make sure you stay tuned to the next episode where I give my review over this highly exalted whiskey. Until next time, I would like to say, make sure that you drink responsibly. Salute to you no matter where you are out in the world. And as always, gentlemen, keep it classy.